Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. In a previous video, we covered how to conjugate verbs into their volitional form. And at the end of the video, I addressed that this would be useful in future lessons because we need the verbs to be in their volitional form to use them in certain grammar constructs. And so today we're going to cover one of those grammar constructs which kind of modifies the volitional form of the verb, the function of the volitional form, just a little bit to mean something else. And so today what we're going to cover is the volitional form of a verb plus the phrasing to omo, which means to think, to change that into an expression that means one is thinking of doing verb. So if the definition of the volitional form is to express an intention, a volition to perform a certain action, then this grammar construct right here, volitional form of a verb plus to omo, is going to express a developing thought to perform that action. And if you've watched a certain previous video, then you might see that this function, this definition, is very similar to another grammar construct that we've covered so far, and that grammar construct is the plain form of a verb plus the expression sumori desu or sumori da to mean I intend to verb. And for the most part, these are pretty interchangeable. It's just that this grammar construct here, it has a lighter tone, less emphasis of that intention. Additionally, if we have a case where we want to express that one has an intention not to perform a certain action, then we're actually not going to use this grammar construct so much as the one that I just stated, the plain form plus sumori. That one is much more commonly used when you want to express in the negative form an intention, and while it is still possible with this grammar construct, it is just really rare. So all in all, if you want to know how to express an intention not to do something, watch or rewatch the lesson on the plain form of verb plus sumori to find out the proper grammar behind that. Back to the topic of this video, there is one more thing we need to cover before we go on to the examples, and that is, since this expression uses the verb omo, which means to think, we need to clarify how we use this in the third person. And the truth is, this grammar construct isn't really often used in the third person because, as we should know by now, in the Japanese language, it can be considered extremely rude to express another person's thoughts or intentions or feelings for them, such as using the verb to think in the third person, saying something along the lines of that guy thinks this girl thinks that. That's considered pretty darn rude. But of course, there are always exceptions, and the one case in which you should be able to use this grammar construct in the third person without being judged too much is if you use it for people you are particularly familiar or close with. And in a previous video, we should know that when we're using the verb omo in the third person, it changes from omo to omotte iru or omotte imasu, and that is the te form of omo plus the verb iru in its plain form or polite form imasu. So with the exposition for this grammar construct covered, let's go through some quick examples now. For our first example sentence, we have the simple line natsu umi ni ikou to omo. And what this line is saying is basically, I think I'll go to the beach this summer. Let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have natsu, which is summer. Right after natsu, we have umi, and this is going to translate to sea or beach in this case. We have the particle ni marking the beach as the location. And then after that, we have the verb iku, which means to go in its volitional form, ikou. Then we're going to follow that with to omo, just like this grammar construct demands, to mean instead of I will go to the beach, I think I will go to the beach. So combine that with the rest of the sentence, and natsu umi ni ikou to omo translates to I think I will go to the beach this summer. For our next example sentence, we have a slightly longer sentence. We have the line kyou no renshu wa sugoku kibishikatta desu kara ashita uchi de relaxu shiyou to omoimasu. And so this sentence right here is going to translate to something along the lines of today's practice was really tough, so I think I'll spend the whole day tomorrow relaxing at home. So let's evaluate this sentence by breaking it down bit by bit. First up, we have the line kyou, which is today. We have the particle no right after it, and then we have the noun renshu after it, which means practice, and the particle no here is just doing the noun of a noun modification. So kyou no renshu is the practice of today or today's practice. We have the particle wa marking the practice as the topic. We have sugoku, which is the adverb really. It's going to modify the kibishi, which means strict, severe, harsh, tough, something along those lines. So far we have today's practice was tough. After that we have desu followed by the conjunction kara, which means because basically. So because today's practice was so tough. And then we move on to the second half of the sentence and we start with ashita, which is going to be tomorrow. We have uchi, which means house or home. We have the particle de, marking the home as the location in which an activity is going to occur. And we get the activity now. We have the activity relax, rirakusu. And this is going to be a verbal noun. So we follow that with the verb suru, which is always used in verbal nouns. But of course, we're going to need to conjugate suru into its volitional form, which is going to be shio. So far that's going to translate to I will relax tomorrow. But we're going to modify shio with to omo to make it I think I will relax tomorrow. And we're also going to conjugate omo into omoimasu because we're having a polite sentence here. And now we're going to combine everything together. And so we have 今日の練習はすごく厳しかったですから明日うちでリラックスしようと思います。Today's practice was really tough, so I think I'll spend the whole day at home relaxing tomorrow. For our last sentence, we're going to do a sentence in the third person, but again, like I said earlier, this isn't a really often case because it is considered rude to speak for another person's thoughts and or feelings or intentions, but in the case that you're really familiar with someone, you can do so. So for our example sentence here, our familiar close person is going to be the hypothetical girlfriend, and our line is 来年彼女は私と一緒にパリに行こうと思っている. And what this line basically translates to is next year my girlfriend is thinking of going to Paris with me. So let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have 来年, which is going to be next year. We have the noun 彼女, which is going to be girlfriend. We have wa, marking her as the topic of the sentence. We have watashi, which is going to be me. We have the particle to, which is basically going to translate to with here. Then after to, we have isho ni, which is going to translate to together. So 彼女は私と一緒に is going to translate to my girlfriend together with me. And right after that, we have the word Paris, which is going to be Paris. It's in katakana here. We have after that the particle ni, marking Paris or Paris as the location. Then we have the verb iku, which we used in the first example sentence already, and it's going to be in its volitional form again. So iku turns into iko. Then we mark that with to. Then we're going to change omo here to omotte iru because we're using the third person, and that's how we use the verb omo in the third person. And we're going to keep it plain, so it's going to be omotte iru instead of omotte imasu. And all together, once again, 来年彼女は私と一緒にパリに行こうと思っている is my girlfriend is thinking of going to Paris with me next year. And so yeah, this has been a relatively simple lesson because we covered the volitional form already in a previous video. So that was a lot of background information and it made this lesson much easier. And so now we have it, volitional form of a verb plus the phrasing to omo is an expression used to denote that someone is developing a thought to perform a certain action. And it is very similar to the grammar construct plain form of a verb plus tsumori, which also expresses intention, and that one has a stronger note of intention, and this one is less emphasized, and that is basically the summary of what just happened.